I'm at Caffeine and Machine to drive these three. All three of them. So the GT86 is in for its 120,000 mile service, and the guys at Listers Toyota in Coventry very kindly said, well, while it's in for a service, why don't you take its replacement out for a spin, see what you think, see if you like it, which obviously makes a lot of sense. Very smart thinking. But we got chatting and they saw a bit more about what we do here with Takona and Coffees and Cars and the podcast and all the lovely stuff that we've going on. And they said, well, seeing as we've got all three, why don't you have a go in each of them? So that's what we're doing. We're going to have a go in the Supra, the 86 and the Yaris. The only challenge is the Supra is an auto. It's not quite as fun, but it's very fit for purpose as that is a proper GT touring car. Whereas these two are a lot more focused on, let's take it to the track, let's hit some back roads. So that's the plan for this afternoon. Drive all three, see how we get on. So, makes sense to take the GR86 first, as it is the most similar to the car I already have. So I'll be able to give a bit more of an accurate like for like in how this feels versus how the GT86 feels. Obviously my GT86 isn't a standard GT86, it's going to be very slightly different because I've got coilovers and bigger wheels and a louder exhaust. So I don't want to misconstrue that they're not going to be exactly the same comparison. However, this is a very different car to a standard GT86, because why would you call it something else otherwise? Otherwise it'd just be another facelift. So what we're in now has 2.4 litres instead of the 2 litres of the GT86, 40 more horsepower, and most importantly the torque curve has been properly smoothed out. So normally in the GT86 about 4,000 revs to have any power, so I'm sat at 3,000 revs now, put my foot down and we get power. It's not instant, it's not like a modern turbo engine where power, go. You still have a little bit of a, right, we're building up, and then cams lift and we really pick up some speed. But it's better, it's a lot better. The car itself delivers that experience in a much more kind of on-demand way than what the GT86 did. There's no dead spot like there is in the 86. In my 86, I'd have had to wait a little bit while the revs built up. Now in terms of ride and comfort and noise, again, it's not a fair comparison to my GT86, but mine hasn't always been modified. I've been on the motorway in this today and it's been perfectly pleasant. I can sit and talk without having to shout or raise my voice. But when you put your foot down, so I'll go down to... There's still enough drama that it's not boring and it's not drony. There was a lot of complaint about the original 86 being a little bit drony. This seems to have remedied that because you can really get a lot more engine now. And I don't know whether they got rid of the little, in the footwell in the GT86 there's a little hole that goes straight into the engine compartment, so you get that little bit more noise. I'm not sure if they've got rid of that or not, and I don't really want to lift the carpets up to try and figure it out. And in terms of dynamic experience, the package works really well. They've really maintained the essence of what made the GT86 such an interesting and exciting car to live with. You don't have to be doing 100 mile an hour to get the most out of these cars. You get that engaging experience at 40, 50 miles an hour on the back roads, on country lanes. On the motorways, it's got enough power now to not be outran by everyone and the mum when you're pulling off onto the slip roads. You can kind of keep up with traffic a lot more effectively than you could before. But that's not what this car's about. That's not what the GT86 was ever about. It's not what the MX-5 is about, which is probably its closest comparison. It's about that sitting on the corners without having to go too fast and too dangerously, but being able to be part of the whole car. You feel the The G, as you're moving sideways, you are engaged with the whole experience of this car. And that's what makes it great. That's what these are for. And it's what is often missed when people criticise them on the internet for not having 300 horsepower like a Golf R. They're missing the essence of this. You can get the most out of this car without having to put yourself and others at risk in the same way. You can enjoy this car at 60 miles an hour on a nice stretch of B road. And it will reward you for that. It will say, well done, here is another nice corner for you to enjoy as you feel the limits of the car. You can take this car around a corner and you can feel right where it's about to push and right where the edge is. And if you snap a little bit, A, you're not going fast enough to just disappear into a hedge, and B, it will kind of be a little bit more forgiving. It will go, oh, I saw what you did there, careful, pull it back in line, and away we go again. Oh, that power on demand is so much more responsive than mine. It is more confidence inspiring. Having that power just more readily available is so much more confidence inspiring. You can approach overtaking with a lot more kind of confidence that that gap is big enough. You don't have to second guess whether you've got enough power or if you're in the right gear to get past. You've just got a lot more of a, right, off we go, foot down, here we go. It's a really, really good car. I really like this. But on to the less exciting bits. Talk about some of the creature comforts. Well, these seats, they've got the half leather, half Alcantara seats in this. And they are very lovely. And they're heated, which mine aren't, which I would like. The dashboard is the big Toyota one from the likes of the Prius. So it is big, but there are still buttons, especially for forward and back on the radio, which is a big one for me. Having something I can just touch and feel without having to look at. Hats off to Toyota for keeping that a thing, because a lot of places haven't, and you can really tell when you try and drive a car that everything is haptic. You're always looking away from where you're going. So fair play for them to keep that. Apple CarPlay is a nice thing to have. This now has an armrest, which I can't close because I've got a cup in there, but that's a good addition. That didn't exist before. And if you've had an 86 and lived with an 86, that is a really important thing to know about. Steering wheel buttons, they were brought in on the facelift 86, so that's not new. The steering wheel itself feels a little bit smaller, but I don't think it probably is. It's probably just in my head. This is a nicer texture than what's in mine. However, I have noticed that there is some scratching on it from other people's rings and stuff like that, so I'm not sure how durable that is. But this has been a really nice place to be. I can't really fault it. It is 20 grand more than a second-hand 86 at the minute. But it's a brand new car, so it's hard to justify moaning about it. My car's done 120,000 miles, and I have had some ups and downs. I'm not going to lie about that. It's given me a lot of joy though. I have happily put 110,000 miles on there. In terms of comparing this to my car, if I were spending £30,000 on a car, the challenge is it's very similar in terms of how you sit, how it all feels, the proportions. Everything feels familiar. You're not stepping into something completely new. And I wonder how long it takes for the newness of a car to wear off and that to become an irrelevant point. I think the benefit of this car is that ability to just really enjoy it. And I'm not sure if it's enough difference to my 86 for me to step into it. I don't know if that extra bit of power is really enough to sway that argument across. It is a bit addictive though. it is nice to be able to reliably have power a bit more on demand. And we're back at Caffeine and Machine, so let's go and jump into something else, shall we? Hey, let's go for the Supra. Very different dashboard in here. This is noticeably a nicer place to be. Right, let's go for a spin. Now, this is a completely different car in essence. Much longer bonnet, much wider. And everybody's going to say the same thing. Well, it's a BMW underneath. Well, yes, because that's the only way that some of these interesting cars exist these days. They worked with BMW to make this, otherwise it wouldn't exist. And they worked with Subaru on the GT86, otherwise that wouldn't exist. So be happy they exist at all. So because of the BMW connection, we have iDrive and we have BMW stalks, BMW buttons, all that sort of stuff. Which means it's a nice place to be. People moaning about it being BMW. BMWs are nice. What's the problem? Anyway, let's get back to the driving. So I've got it in auto at the minute. I'm on a relatively mundane bit of road. So it means that I can just get to know what it's like in here. This is the first time I've ever been in a Supra. There have been months and months, if not years, of me asking to have a go whenever the GT86 is in for a service. And I'm not going to the dealer that I used to go to get the car serviced. And now I've been allowed to go. So what that happened was I went somewhere better, which is Listers. So Listers of Coventry, thank you very much. Finally somebody was like, oh, he's in an 86, let's let him have a go in another car, because that makes a lot of sense. And it does. It also means that Listers are showing a bit of support for what I do with Takona. It's not just a let's try and sell him another car scenario, because I don't want it to be perceived that way. It would be wrong of me to say that Listers only do this to let me try and buy a new car off them. That's not what's going on. We had a very nice conversation about Takona and about what I do in the car community with the clothing and the podcast and the car meets and all that sort of stuff. And they said, well, we like that. We like that you're trying to make a difference for automotive enthusiasts. We like that you're trying to make a difference for the community. Would you also like to drive the Supra and the Yaris? Let's get some content, let's talk about it together, let's share and be part of this community. So there's a lot of good intention behind this. It's not just me going, oh, I might buy a car off you if you let me have a go. It's Listers going, let's do something good, let's work together, let's share the cars, let's talk about the community, let's talk about how cars and driving are good for mental health, which is how this has all come about. So absolute hats off to them for making this happen. Let's get back to the Supra though. I'm in a Supra. It's at least a year. It's at least a year I've been trying to get a drive in one of these. And so far, it's a nice place to be. It's very comfy. It's not loud. I can talk. It's nice and clear. Same with the GT86 and the GR86. It's not an overbearing environment. I would say that there is a noticeable step up in the quality in here. It is tangibly nicer than the other cars in the trio. Everything is leather or carbon, everything feels solid. The stalks are thick, chunky, you can get your hands on them stalks. It's not plastic. Not that the other three cars, including my GT86, are bad places to be. They're not poor quality or less well built, but this is a noticeable step into a higher quality product, which it should be. It's twice the cost of the GR86. You expect a higher level of quality, and it's delivering that. It's a really lovely place to be. The seats are leather and heated, and they have really good side support, which for me is a huge factor in driving experience. One of the reasons I ended up with my GT86 was as soon as I got in and the seats were as kind of not holding, but fitted well, it changed the whole experience of driving the car. So before I got my GT86, I test drove an MX-5, which again, similar driving experience, similar level of engagement, similar amount of you have to work for your power, but the seats were nowhere near as hugging and they were nowhere near as side supporting. So the 86 just had that whole level above the MX-5 for my personal driving experience. Now being in here is another scenario like that. The 86 seats are amazing and they're way more like bucket, which is perfect for like track driving or country lane driving, fast B road driving. This is hugging but not as, I'm not going to say uncomfortable because they're not uncomfortable, it's not as focused. They're a bit flatter, my legs can kind of splay out the sides more, which is more akin to a GT car, which obviously this is. So it's fit for purpose. It is designed to be a GT car and it's doing that just fine. It does exactly what it's supposed to. It is a comfy cruiser that isn't making you feel like you're wedged in. I don't feel like my ears are going to bleed anytime soon. It's doing the job. It does the job. It's a really nice place to be. I don't know if it's standard, but I can get straight through into the boot from here. The weird thing is there's this shelf in between the back window and the boot, which is like a parcel shelf, but it's really solid. I don't know if that's removable or not, because when I sit in here I'm thinking about how many boxes of t-shirts I can get in to take to an event. Not necessarily will my suitcase fit. I'm not sure if it's big enough for me to use for what I use the GT for now. Right, road's cleared up. Let's put this in manual. Put my foot down, shall we? Oh, back end a little bit. That hood display is a really handy thing. Oh, it auto blips a little bit as well. Not properly, but because it changes so quick. It's a bit damp, so we got a little bit of a twitch when we came off the roundabout, but not to a point where I was scared. I didn't think I was about to bin it into a hedge, which would have been very awkward. My only thinking is, this isn't as playful as the 86. It's not as light on its feet. In the GT86 and the GR86, you can really get a sense of what everything's doing at any given moment. Whereas in this, it feels a lot more, it feels solid, but a lot less connected. And it's probably because it's designed to be a more grand touring, motorway mile cruiser rather than a light and nimble backlane sprint kind of car. But you do notice it. In the 86, you feel a lot more encouraged to hold it in a lower gear and kind of give it a bit more of a push. Whereas in here, it's so quite comfortable. You don't really mind. You just one hand on the wheel and off we go. Let's have a nice gentle cruise. I wonder if it would be more engaging with the manual though. I wonder if having that third pedal would be enough to make this feel like a more agile sports car, or whether you just end up putting it in a high gear and sitting at a high gear again. I've got 8-speed gearbox in here, 8 speeds, which means that when you blip the throttle, it dumps down 2 gears. 2. Right, okay, let's put this in manual. We've got a nice empty stretch, drop it into 2, and go. Oh, bit of wheel spin, turbo kicked in, there we go. Back end a little bit, there we go. Oh, the front feels way lighter at that pulling off speed. Oh, that's an interesting characteristic. When you properly bury your foot, the front noticeably feels lighter, and the front end feels a little bit, not twitchier, but less connected. which is interesting because it's got that huge engine up at the front of here, but it's putting down all of its power so instantly compared to the other cars that you feel it hunker down, and you can really feel that front end just lift ever so slightly. And because the back end's fighting for grip because it's a bit damp, the whole car feels very much looser than when you're just kind of cruising. If I want to push this car to the limit where all the fun stuff happens, I'm going to have to break the speed limit. I'm going to have absolutely hoon this to get it up to those numbers of enjoyment. But to do that, you have to really push the car. I'm not really sure that that's the way I enjoy driving, because I'm just cruising at the speed limit now. And I'm not, it's not putting the smile on my face that the 86 would. Doing this stretch of road in the 86 would normally be something that would put a grin on my face. So I'm on a bit more of a back lane now, and roads like this, you really do start to feel the size difference between this and the GR86. This feels much bigger and much softer. Not that it is wallowy, but you don't feel as much like you're on your toes. So it's not quite as confidence inspiring going down these roads. In the GT and the GR86s, because they share the same chassis and a lot of the dynamic is similar, what you can do is you can really kind of connect the corners with quite a lot of confidence. You don't feel like you're the whole width of the lane. It feels much more like you're in something smaller and lighter, because you are, but it's more noticeable. Whereas in this, you feel so much wider. I feel like I'm on that edge of the road, even though I'm quite a way off. Here we go, car coming the other way. Thanks for slowing down, mate. This is really designed for these big, wide B roads where you can kind of push it a bit and you can enjoy it in that way. Handbrake on. There we go, Supra. I like it. I'm not trying to knock on the Supra. I think it's a very different driving experience to any of the 86 cars. It's not designed for the back lanes. It's so much more about the B roads, and it does that really, really well. So let's go and jump in the Yaris. Yaris time. All sorts of noises in here. That's a good warning to have, I suppose. Have to give that a minute to warm up. First time in a Yaris. Let's see how we get on. So inside here, you're sat very much like you're in a Yaris in terms of how high you are off the road, and kind of you've got loads of visibility. Just kind of bumbling around this car park feels like a Yaris with really nice seats. So it's interesting to see how this car is going to perk up when we get out onto the proper roads, because it is four-wheel drive, so it should be quite lively on these back roads when I eventually get out of Caffeine and Machine's car park. We've all heard the reviews, we've all heard the stories about how these are such fun cars. So as soon as you get onto a bit of road and you have a chance to kind of put the throttle in a little bit, it's immediately way more lively than you anticipate. So all of this feels like a Yaris immediately out the window. It doesn't feel like a Yaris at all. It feels like you're in a sports car that's sat upright rather than laying down. So the 86 and the Supra, your legs are way out in front of you, And in this, you're at a 45-degree angle like a normal car, basically. It is, however, a lot more aggressive on the throttle. So the 86, you can really kind of give it some welly before you have to worry about it kind of spitting out at you. And the Supra, because it's an auto and because it's got that big 6-cylinder with the turbo, you mash your foot and it goes, right, here we go. This is so much more like, right, what are we doing? Let's go, come on. It's ready to kind of chew your head off at any minute. It's ready to go. It wants to go all the time. Unlike the car in front of us that wants to do 20 miles an hour below the speed limit all the time. But we'll be taking a back road soon. A back road, not the back roads TM, before they jump in the comments. Because they will, and they'll try and sue me for £1 million. Right, so, Asbo car versus the other two then. One big tangible difference between this and especially the Supra is this interior, the space that you spend most of your time. It feels like they've spent all of the money on making this a fun car and not really cared much more outside of that about this space. The steering wheel is wrapped in nice leather and the gear knob is nice and very similar to the 86, although not quite as nice to look at. But outside of that and these amazingly nice Alcantara and leather seats, it's a Yaris. So it's got a big central infotainment system, it's got big buttons, it's plastic. It is very similar in how it kind of presents itself to the normal Yaris, which I've had a couple of on this whole servicing the car saga. But on this back road, right, so the GR86 is a lot of fun down roads like this, as is my GT86. This thing picks up speed so quickly in comparison. You really don't have to work at it in the same way. In the 86s, you have to kind of put your work in to get up to speed, whereas this is just a little rocket. Like, it really just wants to go all the time. I can't believe how much more energetic this car is than the other two. The other two aren't lazy cars. This is so much more aggressive, and I didn't expect that. I thought it would be more akin to the 86 in that you have to kind of put the work in, give it the beans and wring its neck. But it's not like that at all. It just wants to go quickly, and it encourages you to stay in a lower gear by just having little bursts of power no matter what you're doing on the throttle. It's a very different experience in here. The only oddity is that you are sat so high up in comparison. There's a van in front of me and I feel like I'm at the same eye level as the van driver. Jeez, that turbo just kicks in. What a little rocket. Now the other two cars out of that junction both wanted to kick the back end out because they're rear wheel drive. This feels more like a fast front wheel drive car with rear wheel engagement than it does a rear wheel drive car that has front wheel engagement. So it feels like it's pulling along, it's grabbing at the surface in front of it rather than being pushed forwards. Which, having spent most of my driving life until I got the 86 driving front wheel drive cars, is really familiar. Now my little Renault 5 doesn't do anything like that because it has 40 horsepower. But you feel, when you put your foot down in a front wheel drive car, you feel it hunker down, but it feels like you're being pulled along by the car rather than being pushed. Whereas the 86 and the Supra both feel like they're pushing, lifting that front up, and the back is where all the action is happening. Whereas in this, it feels so much more front wheel drive focused with rear wheel drive like engagement. It's a very different experience, and that turbo kick, that's addictive. I can see why so many people say this is the car that will cost them their license, because that little pocket rocket of an engine with the turbo on just loves it. And you'll have seen from the smile that immediately shot on my face from that little pull away then, that this thing is just so much fun. Right, let's put it in normal, 4th gear, 30 mile an hour. Oh, we're in a Yaris again. The werewolf has turned back and we're just in a Yaris. Oh, but look, a 60 road. Let's change down into 2nd gear, shall we? Asbo mode is on. Jesus Christ, that's addictive. It just wants to go and go and go. Now, it's not a Golf R, it's not a 1,000,000 horsepower supercar, so it's quite a manageable amount of power. Even if you are stuck behind someone doing 30 in a 60, you can live with this. This isn't an enormous amount of power that's going to spit you into a hedge at any given moment. It's quick enough to be kicking you up the backside and punting you down the road, but it's not too much. It's not going to cause you to lose your license every time you even think about touching the throttle. You don't have to drive worrying that if you get a sudden burst of energy and you mash your foot, you're focusing on the speedo more than you are on the road, which to some extent the Supra is a bit of a victim of, because it is a very quick car. You can very quickly get up to breaking the speed limit. I'm going to back off from this car and do a bit of a 0 to 60, shall we? Right, we're at 0. That car's buggered off. Ready? There's 60. 60, that's a quick 60, but it's not melting your face fast. It's not a Tesla level of 0 to 60. The wheels didn't spin, it didn't try and spit me out, it didn't try and kick the back end out at all. It just went to 60. It went, right, let's go to 60 then. This might be the most fun car of the 3 for being a bit of an idiot, if nothing else. If you want to be a bit of a yob, this thing, perfect for it. If you want to go mash your foot at every opportunity and get kicked up the backside, but have a massive grin on your face, it's this one. If you want to string together a series of corners, then the 86 is perfect for that. If you really want to get the most out of an experience, I think the 86 wins. The 86 will just slide smoothly. The Supra will kick and then grab itself and then pull you off down the road. This thing just wants to spin. It's so short that it will happily spin you out and put you in a hedge if you turn the traction control off. It's almost daring you. It's letting you know that if you mess around with it, it's going to have you. What a thing though. What a fantastic little bit of kit. All done. All 3 much dirtier than when we started, especially the Supra. Look at all the mud on there. That'll be from dodging the tractor, I suppose. That's it. Thank you so much to Listers, who are hiding behind the camera, for letting me have a drive, coming with me to Caffeine and Machine, taking the cars out for a spin. It's been a lovely day, thank you.